In this video we're going to be looking over this Minolta SRT-101 35mm film camera. This camera was introduced in the year 1966, and this is one of the earlier versions of it, as evidenced by the black shutter speed dial and the slotted screws. Those were changed later on in the design. So this one, I believe, is likely from the late 1960s. I started using a Minolta SRT-101 in 1979, and that camera was based on this, very similar, so I know this camera pretty well. And my goal here is to demonstrate the function of this and look it over on video in a way that gives you a good look at it, almost as if you're inspecting it yourself in your own hands. So let's get started. I thought what I would do is step down through the shutter speeds. We're going to set this at 1/1000th of a second, and we'll take off the body cap here so we can watch the mirror flip up. So here's 1/1000th of a second, 1/500th, 1/250th, 1/125th, 1/60th, 1/30th, 1/15th, 1/8th, 1/4th, 1/2, 1 full second, and the bulb setting where the mirror stays up, the shutter stays open back to the pressure plate there as long as I hold the button, and the cycle completes when I let up. A few other things we should check. Well, the mirror lock up right here is this little knob. I can flip that up and down, so that's nice, and then the camera will just function with the mirror up all the way, all the time, but we can release that back. We can do the self timer by pulling that down, and there's a little button right here that we press instead of the shutter button to activate the timer. We'll just watch that finish its cycle. Okay. Then there's the stop down preview button, and the 101 had a locking stop down. And so if we watch right here, we can watch what happens. You have to have it cocked, so that's why I did that. There, this button went over here, and right now, if there were lens mounted on here, this would have allowed the lens to stop down to whatever it's at, so you could adjust that and have the lens stop down to what the lens says, and then it's a second step to undo that. Some of the later cameras in the SRT series had just a push and hold and released, but this one has the locking style. So, another thing we should check is the aperture follower ring. It's sprung back, so that will follow what the lens is set at. It almost feels like it's just the slightest bit slow, though it's actually pretty quick. Sometimes these get jammed up and they will not come back, which will mean that you're not communicating properly between the lens and body. So that's pretty good. The lens release button is good. And if we look here on the top, this one has the plastic tip on the film advance lever, and that's in good shape. The ASA is set by pulling up on this, and we can run it up to 6400 all the way down to 6. We'll just set that at a more typical value of 200. The film rewind crank is a nice metal crank, and if we pull that up, that releases the back. We can open that up, and let's just watch the film curtains and the film advance mechanism over here. That all looks really good. If we move over here to the door, we can see there's quite a bit of light seal residue material along these door edges. And so that has printed over there out of these areas in here and here. And so that tells me that these light seals have broken down, and that should all be dug out of these channels and replaced, and this all cleaned up. So I would say it does need light seals. I don't know if it wouldn't take pictures properly without doing that. I can't say that for sure, but I would want those replaced because that's quite a lot of material over here. So that has clearly degraded. The door closes nicely. Crank snaps back down. If we look down here, it has a battery check function, the off, and the on function. Now this camera only uses a battery for the meter. It's a fully manual mechanical camera. The battery goes in this compartment over here, and let's get that out of there. The 101 has this kind of knurled surface, and there is a place to put the spanner wrench, I guess, in those two holes. The later SRTs had a slot which made it easier to just stick a nickel in there and turn it, but this one does not have that. Battery compartment looks okay. I did put a battery in there and verified that the meter does respond to light. I did not check it for accuracy, partially because the meters on these cameras are calibrated for a voltage of the battery that you cannot typically get anymore. There's a battery that's made that fits this, but the voltage is a little bit higher, and it messes up the exposure if you go by what the meter says using that battery. So be aware of that. There are different ways of dealing with that, and that's a whole separate topic that you can research about if you're serious about getting one of these cameras. With that, I think we have just about gone over everything. Looking at the cosmetic condition, I see there's a little bit of hunting and pecking around the tripod socket. Not real bad. A little bit of scuffing on the base plate. The top here looks pretty good. There's some dirt down in here. I suppose we could clean some of that up a little bit. But yeah, typically you can just get that off with a Q-tip or something. So yeah, that already looks a lot better. And if we look around the back here, there's a little bit of abrasion on the back of the door corners. Here and here. No denting or any real problems, just a little bit of abrasion. And it has a pretty heavy duty strap. And it's got the old style Minolta logo on the body cap that fits on like that. So, fairly nice example of the early style SRT-101. I would say it needs light seals and probably could benefit from a typical clean lube adjust service. But it's a good one to start with. It's cosmetically pretty nice and would clean up really good, and it's basically functional as we've just demonstrated.